Okay, so you know that saying, all that glitters is not gold?
Yeah, classic.
Well, this time it kind of is, and it's led to a scientific discovery that's seriously blowing my mind.
Oh, I love those. Tell me more. What did they find?
Get this. A bug completely coated in pyrite.
Whoa, like a tiny golden statue.
Exactly. And get this. It was found in New York State and dates back 450 million years.
Wait, a gold-plated bug from, like, the time of the dinosaurs? Okay, you've got my attention.
Actually, even before the dinosaurs, this little guy predates them by a long shot. It was just announced this week in Current Biology. But here's where it gets really wild.
Yeah.
This bug had no eyes.
No eyes. Whoa, how could it survive? That's incredible adaptation.
Right, and that's part of what scientists are trying to figure out. But the location of the find is interesting, too. They discovered it at Beecher's Bed near Rome, New York.
Okay, Beecher's Bed. That name rings a bell. Why do I know that?
Well, Charles Emerson Beecher, he was the head of the Yale Peabody Museum back in the late 1800s. He was all over this site studying trilobites.
Oh, right, of course. So is that where our little golden friend is headed?
You guessed it. The bug's final resting place will be that same Yale Peabody Museum, adding to the collection that Beecher started. It's kind of a cool connection, you know.
Wow. Talk about a legacy. So what kind of bug are we talking about? What's his name?
It's called Lomankus edgecombei. And picture this. Horseshoe crabs, scorpions, and spiders. Lomankus was related to all of them.
Okay, so an arthropod with some seriously ancient roots. But how do we know so much about it? It's 450 million years old.
That's where the pyrite comes in. Over millions of years, that fool's gold basically seeped into every nook and cranny of the bug's body, replacing its soft tissues.
So basically turned the bug into a golden statue, preserving it in crazy detail.
Exactly. It's actually pretty common at Beecher's Bed. The site is known for this kind of pyrite preservation, and that's why it's given us so many cool fossils over the years.
It sounds like a paleontologist's dream, literally.
Right.
But what about the bigger picture? What does this bug tell us about, the evolution of life?
Well, Lomankus belonged to this group called megacherons.
Megacherons. I've heard of that. Vaguely. Remind me.
You've definitely seen their descendants around. Think scorpions, spiders, all part of this crazy old and diverse lineage. These were arthropods, and they were known for having like these adaptable heads and specialized appendages.
Interesting. So they were kind of versatile, able to change with the times.
Exactly. And where does our little golden friend fit in? Well, get this. Lomankus had these front appendages with, quote, a trio of long, flexible, whip-like flagella.
Wait, whip-like flagella on a bug? That sounds pretty intense.
And scientists think they were probably sensory organs. Remember, no eyes. So imagine it using those flagella to feel around, find food in that pitch-black ocean.
So this bug was basically tasting its way through the ocean floor.
That's what they think. And here's another cool connection. One of the study's co-authors, Derek Briggs, he spent decades researching Beecher's Bed fossils right there at the Peabody Museum.
It's like he was meant to help bring Lomankus into the spotlight.
Right. So many connections coming together. But here's another thing. It lived during the Ordovician period, which came after the Cambrian.
Most megacherons died out in the Cambrian.
Right.
So this little bug is pushing back that timeline.
Bingo. It's like finding a missing puzzle piece and realizing the whole picture is bigger than you thought.
Wow. And to think, it all started with a bug covered in fool's gold, found in a place with such a rich history of discovery.
I know, right? This tiny golden bug is a window into a whole lost world.
A world without sunlight, where creatures like Lomankus had to rely on these other senses to survive. It makes you wonder, what would it have been like to experience the world through those senses?
It really makes you appreciate the diversity of life on Earth, doesn't it? And the crazy ways creatures have adapted to survive in even the most extreme environments.
It really does. Okay, so we've talked about how Lomankus sensed its world, but how did this whole pyrite preservation thing happen? It's not like every ancient bug gets turned into a gold statue.
Right, so let's talk about that. Right, so how did this happen? How did this bug get turned into a golden statue?
Yeah, it's not like every ancient bug gets preserved like this. What's fascinating is how something seemingly, simple, like minerals replacing organic matter, can create such a detailed record. It's like nature's way of taking a snapshot.
Yeah, like a time capsule, preserving things we'd never be able to see otherwise.
It makes you realize how much we owe to, these chance occurrences of fossilization. I mean, without them, we'd have such a limited understanding of Earth's history.
I know, right? It's amazing to think about all the creatures that lived and died and left no trace behind. We're lucky to have the fossils we do. and even luckier when they're preserved in such amazing detail, like with Lomankus.
Absolutely. I mean, it allows us to reconstruct their anatomy, figure out their relationships, piece together their place in the big story. And speaking of piecing things together, remember how I was saying, technology plays such a big part in paleontology these days? This is a perfect example.
You're talking about the CT scanning, right? I read that they use that on Lomankus.
Exactly. It's like having X-ray vision, but for fossils. Scientists can basically peel back layers of rock and see details that would be impossible to observe otherwise.
It's kind of crazy how technology is constantly pushing the boundaries of what we can learn about the past. Who knows what tools we'll have, 100 years from now. But yeah, for now, CT scans. And they're giving us an even clearer picture of Lomankus.
And that information helps scientists better understand, the evolution of arthropods as a whole. All those adaptations that allowed them to thrive for millions of years. It's really remarkable.
Thinking about all of this, those ancient oceans, it must have been a completely different world down there.
What do you mean?
Well, no sunlight, right? Crushing pressure, probably intense competition for resources. It must have been a tough place to live.
It's true. I mean, those deep sea environments were, and still are, incredibly challenging places. But what's so fascinating is that, life not only survived, but thrived in those conditions. And Lomankus is a perfect example of that resilience.
It's humbling, isn't it, to think about these ancient ecosystems teeming with life, all those creatures, adapting and evolving in ways we can't even imagine. It makes you wonder if life can thrive in those conditions. I mean, could it exist in other seemingly inhospitable places?
You mean like on other planets?
Exactly.
Well, that's a question that keeps a lot of scientists up at night. And, while we haven't found any definitive proof of extraterrestrial life yet, the discoveries we make here on Earth give us clues about what might be possible out there. So it's really exciting to think about.
It is, and it all comes back to this tiny golden bug and the story it's telling us.
It's a great reminder that, even the smallest discoveries can have a huge impact. I mean, they can completely change our understanding of the universe.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about how Lomankus sensed its world, but let's get back to those senses. If it couldn't see, what else did it have going on?
Right. So remember, we're talking about the deep ocean floor here. No sunlight, pitch black. Sight wouldn't be very useful. So scientists think Lomankus probably relied heavily on, there's this thing called chemoreception.
Chemoreception, okay. Break that down for me. What does that even mean?
It's basically like a superpowered sense of smell and taste, but underwater.
Whoa, so like detecting tiny traces of chemicals in the water.
Exactly. It's like sniffing out your next meal from miles away, but you're doing it in the ocean.
So Lomankus was cruising around, basically tasting the ocean floor to find food.
That's the idea. And those, whip-like flagella we talked about, they could have been covered in these things called chemoreceptors, making them super sensitive to even the faintest signals.
Okay, so picture this. Lomankus down in the depths, waving those flagella around, picking up the scent of, I don't know, a tasty trilobite hiding in the sediment.
Exactly. But, there's another sense we haven't talked about. Mechanoreception.
Okay, mechanoreception. That sounds intense. What is that?
So think about how, fish use their lateral lines to feel vibrations, pressure changes in the water.
Right.
That's mechanoreception. It's how they navigate, find prey, avoid predators.
Ah, okay, so Lomankus probably had something similar. Maybe to sense other creatures moving around in the sediment.
You got it. And get this, some scientists believe that those same whip-like flagella might have been sensitive to both chemical signals and vibrations.
No way, seriously. So it's tasting and feeling its way through the ocean floor.
Yeah, talk about a multi-purpose tool, right?
That's wild. And don't forget about, good old-fashioned touch. Those long, flexible flagella would have been perfect for exploring the texture of the sediment, too.
Right. So now I'm really getting a picture of this creature. It's blind, but it's using all these other senses to navigate and understand its environment. It's like it's plugged into this whole network that we can barely even imagine.
It really makes you appreciate the diversity of life on Earth and the amazing ways creatures adapt to survive, even in those extreme environments.
It does. And it makes you wonder, what other sensory worlds are out there, right?
Yeah.
What haven't we even discovered yet?
So we've talked about Lomankus' senses, but it really makes you think about how different those ancient oceans were. No sunlight, intense pressure, probably a lot of competition for resources.
Yeah, no kidding. Those deep sea environments, they were and still are incredibly challenging places. But what's so cool is that life found a way to not only survive, but actually thrive. And Lomankus, perfect example of that. That resilience, it's amazing.
It really is humbling to think about all those diverse creatures, adapting, evolving in ways we can barely wrap our heads around. Makes you wonder if life can thrive in conditions like that. Could it exist in other seemingly impossible places?
You're thinking about the possibility of life on other planets. It's a question that keeps a lot of scientists up at night, for sure. And, we haven't found proof positive of alien life yet, but the discoveries we make here on Earth, they give us clues about what might be possible out there in the universe.
It's mind-blowing, honestly. All because of this tiny golden bug and the story it's telling us.
Just goes to show, even the smallest discoveries can have a huge impact. I mean, they could totally shift how we understand the universe.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, I think it's worth saying again just how special this discovery is. A 450-million-year-old bug preserved in pyrite, giving us a glimpse into a lost world.
And it's not just how cool it looks. The insights Lomankus provides about arthropod evolution, pushing back those timelines, showing us how adaptable life can be, that's incredible.
Plus, we've got that connection to Charles Emerson Beecher, the Yale Peabody Museum, and that amazing collection. It's like this thread connecting scientists across time, all searching for knowledge.
Yeah, a story that spans centuries, different continents, different scientific disciplines. It really highlights the power of collaboration. And it all started with a bug coated in fool's gold.
So for everyone listening out there, the biggest takeaway here is this. Don't underestimate the power of a single fossil. They can open up whole worlds, make us rethink what we thought we knew about the history of life. And not just on Earth, maybe beyond.
Absolutely. Who knows what other wonders are still out there waiting to be found? Maybe another golden bug or something even more incredible. The possibilities are endless.
And that's the beauty of science, isn't it? That never-ending journey of discovery. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and never lose that sense of wonder about the world.